chaos pursues in the first half of the race with multiple crashes, then strategy takes pursuit, and then we have a 3-car battle for the win to finish it. Let's talk about everything that just took place in Sonoma, California. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR in Sonoma for the second road course race of the season, and it was certainly a wild one. One of my favorite Sonoma races that I've seen in quite some time, at least over the last few years, at least in the next-gen era. But man, we had a lot happen. We had 6 cautions at the beginning of this race due to crashes, and then of course we had the second half of the race where there were no cautions, which led into some interesting strategy. But in the end, it was really 3 cars trying to hold off each other to battle for the win, but Kyle Larson takes his third win of the season and his second win at Sonoma, and we'll try to break down everything that just took place. We'll break down what this means for the playoffs. We'll take a look at all the results. We'll talk about the Kyle Busch-Chastain incident. Let's break down NASCAR in Sonoma, the second road course race of the season. And let's just start out with the beginning of it, which really starts on lap 3. It was sort of lap 2 when Denny Hamlin, coming on in the front straightaway crossing the finish line, blows an engine, or engine just retires on him. Very unfortunate situation there. Of course, back-to-back weeks. That happened to Christopher Bell. It was also an engine failure the week before. Not entirely sure what happened to Hamlin's engine. We'll have to go back and take a look at it once that car is dissected by Joe Gibbs Racing. But, you know, that was the start of a really disastrous day for Joe Gibbs Racing. Only one Joe Gibbs Toyota ended up finishing in the top 10 today, which was Christopher Bell and Nice. But we'll get through everything that happened to Joe Gibbs today. But after that, it was a stream of cautions. We had our 6 cautions in the first half of the race that were not due to stages. We had 6 cautions for contact, 6 cautions for crashes. We had Joey Logano caught up in an incident. We had a huge crash where Josh Berry overshoots the corner, or sort of gets a little bit of help from John Hunter Nemechek, to be fair, and then overshoots the corner after that, after the wheels lock up, take out a lot of cars, takes out Austin Dillon, a few others. Ty Gibbs is also taken out in an incident early on in the race, so that they'll finish in the back of the pack outside the top 35, so DNFs for those 3 drivers. But a lot of contact early on in the race was able to let everybody sort of strategize going into that final stage, because I was thinking, you know, we've gone a long way at Sonoma before with no cautions. If you go back to last year, I think there was only stage cautions. I think we went the entire race without a caution for contact. Once again, that was on the old surface. There was a repave at this race in Sonoma, so this was the first time on the new pavement. I think hasn't been repaved since like the 80s before that, so that certainly led into some things. But then we had a 3-car battle after all the strategy played out, where it was Chris Buescher trying to hold off Martin Truex Jr. and then Truex trying to hold off Kyle Larson, and Kyle Larson had about 15 fresher lap tires, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, Buescher and Truex were on the same strategy call. Kyle Busch was on the same strategy call as well, which put him in 4th position at the time before he got caught up in an issue with Ross Chastain, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But my big 3 drivers of the day are going to be those 3 drivers, obviously, because you had Kyle Larson getting the win, was able to sort of blow the doors off. It was within 10 laps to go, but he was coming so quickly, and Truex and Buescher were battling for multiple laps together, and that was slowing them down just enough to give Larson enough time to get to him. And shoot, Larson might have been able to blow both of them's doors off anyway. He was probably the fastest car at the end of the race, was able to tune the car up perfectly, and he had the 15 lap fresher tires or so. And Sonoma's a over 2-mile racetrack, so 15 laps can be a little bit of distance as well. So Kyle Larson obviously able to get his 3rd win of the season. Huge win for him, because this gives him more playoff points. I know he's got 15 playoff points now just based off of wins. I'll have to go back and take a look at how many stage points he has added on top of that as well. I think he has the most stage wins this year as well, and he's also the regular season points leader as well, which comes with 15 bonus points too if he wins that. That's really tight right now. So you're talking about almost a guaranteed Final Four spot for Kyle Larson right now as it plays the number 1 seed in the playoffs. But let's talk about Chris Buescher as well. Very solid run for him. Was up front all day long. Was able to use some strategy, but had the speed too to make moves and open the door for different strategic moves. So very solid 3rd place finish by Chris Buescher. Unfortunately, McDowell was on the other strategy, with the 15 or so fresher lap tires. So McDowell was able to get by him, finish 2nd, but a solid 3rd place finish for Chris Buescher nonetheless. And then you have poor Martin Truex Jr. coming to the checkered flag on the front straightaway, runs out of fuel. Like I said, Joe Gibbs had a really rough day today. Their bad day continued with Denny Hamlin out of the race, and then of course you had Ty Gibbs out of the race due to early problems, and then you had Truex run out of gas while in 2nd place coming to the finish line and just couldn't quite get there. He did cross the line, but the rule says, and it sort of gets complicated, same thing happened earlier this year at Talladega and Daytona. When the caution comes out, it's the moment of caution is where you finish if you cross the line. Truex did cross the line, but since he was considered the reason for the caution and also didn't maintain minimum speed, he does not get scored where he was at the point of the caution and unfortunately finishes in 27th, last on the lead lap. So that gets a little complicated sometimes, but it's certainly a bit strange, but that's how NASCAR rules it. I know they also moved Kyle Busch, who had an issue with Chastain, from 17th. He crossed the line 17th, but at the moment of caution, he was 12th, and Kyle Busch maintained speed in their mind. So Kyle Busch moves back up to 12th. So yeah, certainly a string of incidences there on the final lap. And I want to take a look, before I look at the other results, let's take a look at what happened to Kyle Busch, because he was on the strategy with Buescher and Martin Truex Jr. It was 3 of them on the strategy, I believe, at least up there in the top 3. And then Kyle Busch, of course, on the final lap gets really taken out by Chastain. This is what NASCAR posted on X shortly after the race. You see Chastain, I guess he just locked the wheels up, but looks like to me from this angle, he just dove right through him and flat out knocks Kyle Busch out. Obviously, Kyle Busch ultimately crosses the line 17th, but due to the caution, gets the result of 12th. But Kyle Busch is racing for a playoff spot, so that's really frustrating for him. That is 4 drivers recently that I can think of that Kyle Busch has had a run-in with. You can go back to, obviously, the Ricky Stenhouse incident, and then you can go, with the big fight. Then you can actually go back to earlier this year at Circuit of the Americas when he got into an issue with Christopher Bell at the first road course race of the season. They had a conversation after the race. And then you go back to just last week in St. Louis, Kyle Larson get involved in the wreck with Kyle Busch. And Kyle Busch is finishing on the bottom side of this every single time because Chastain finished 5th today. So very unfortunate for him. But let's go ahead and talk about the entire top 10. Let's take a look at everything that happened. Once again, I mentioned Kyle Larson, 3rd win of the season, 2nd at Sonoma, racking up those playoff points nonetheless. You have Michael McDowell, very solid 2nd place finish for him. Like I said, was on the right side of strategy, had the 15 or so fresher lap tires than Truex, then Buescher, so was able to get up there and finish in the 2nd position with Truex running out of gas on the final lap. I think he was 3rd coming to the flag, and then of course Truex was stalled out on the front straightaway, so McDowell ultimately gets a 2nd place finish. Solid run for him. McDowell obviously has 2 career wins, Daytona 500 and the Indy road course, so McDowell's always had success on the road courses, and no doubt, I believe if with where Michael McDowell's at in the points right now, with a few more road course races coming up on the schedule, I look at the Chicago road course, potentially Michael McDowell could make some moves there and try to at least go for the win. We'll have to keep an eye out for that moving to the road course races the rest of this season. And then we have a few in the playoffs as well if he's able to get there, Watkins Glen and the Charlotte Roval. Once again, I talk about Chris Buescher in the 3rd position. Chase Elliott, solid run today as well, finishing in the 4th position. They're one they talked about going into the race that has not had as much success on the road courses in the next-gen car, which is certainly true because he had, multiple wins. I think it was 6 wins in the old car, but certainly He's been solid on the road courses. He's been in the top 5. He's been obviously 4th today. He's not winning those road course races, but he's certainly solid at those road course races as well. So just want to give a little shout out to Chase Elliott there in the 9 Chevrolet. Ross Chastain, like I said, was battling for 5th and then kind of ran through Kyle Busch there. Chastain's trying to get some points as well. He's not guaranteed into the playoffs, but it's looking good for him points wise. But certainly disappointing that he just runs through Kyle Busch there on the final lap. So certainly there'll probably be some discussions had about that. AJ Allmendinger, obviously the Dinger, one of those road course ringers. The talent that he has on road courses is so impressive to me because somebody running on a part-time schedule, finishing in the top 10, and I say this every time he does it because he does it so frequently, finishing in the top 10 on road courses is so impressive when you're on a part-time schedule, and he does it consistently. He's won at the Indy road course on a part-time schedule, and he won last year after basically being demoted to the Xfinity Series. He won last year at the Roval as well. So, and let's not even start to talk about his Xfinity stats on road courses, right? So, another solid day for AJ Allmendinger. And I believe he was having some trouble with the car in the closing laps of the race as well. So, I have to go back and see what that issue was too. Ryan Blaney in the 7th position. Tyler Riddick, a lot of people consider him the best road course racer in the new era of NASCAR, the next-gen era. A solid 8th place finish today. Just couldn't quite figure everything out with the strategy. Couldn't quite get everything figured out to get the win. But obviously an 8th place finish is a solid top 10 day. Christopher Bell, the only Joe Gibbs Toyota to finish in the top 10 all day long. Obviously everybody else was 27th or worse in the Joe Gibbs camp, but a nice 9th place finish for C. Bell. And then of course Todd Gilliland, another solid run for Todd Gilliland in the top 10 today in the 38 front row car as well. And he's also just recently signed a long-term contract with that 38 team as well. So look forward to seeing what he can do with that. Let's bring up the playoff grid now because I've been mentioning it a little more. 10 races to go now to the playoffs. We completed 16 of the 26 regular season races. Like I said, this moves Kyle Larson into the number 1 seed on the playoff grid with 3 wins. You have Denny Hamlin, William Byron also with 3 wins. Christopher Bell, the only one with 2 wins. And then, of course, you have Elliott, Reddick, Keselowski, Cindric, and Suarez with their win. But it is important to note, once again, Cindric and Suarez are actually below 16th in points, in regular points. But since they have a win, that sort of shakes the playoff cut line up a little bit as well. So you have MTJ. He's, I still think, safe in. I think if I look at the 10th to about 14th, I would say those guys are safe. With the speed they're showing, I don't see, in the results they're putting up week in and week out, I don't see a scenario, unless something drastic changes, where they wouldn't make the playoffs with 10 races to go. The concern starts at Chris Buescher, because Chris Buescher had a good run today, and I believe he's got the speed to make the playoffs. He's had some problems, and he's only 32 points above. That's one race. You could lose those points and be closer to the cut line. Bubba Wallace, he's had some struggles as well, had a lot of issues going into the spring-summer portion of the schedule, had problems today, was off track, did not get the result he wanted today at the road course, which he's struggled on road courses before, but 8 points above the cut line. Kyle Busch, obviously, still 8 points out. He was 20 points out going into today, but his issue today with Ross Chastain did not help. He would have been, maybe 2 points out if he'd finished in the 5th or 6th position. Instead, obviously 8 points out. You have Joey Logano 16 points out as well. And Logano, really rough day. Got caught up in some trouble as well. Was the only driver to pit at the beginning for some reason, and that strategy turned out to not work in Logano's favor whatsoever. I think it was that very next restart he got caught up in a wreck. So Logano is 16 points out. Can he find a little bit of speed to try to get up front and get a race win? And then, of course, Chase Briscoe, 27 points out after a disastrous day today as well. I believe he was caught up in some trouble too. So 27 points out. And then you have McDowell. If you're McDowell, maybe mathematically you can make it in. There probably are a few paths he could point his way in, but I think if you're McDowell or anybody below McDowell in the points, you just need to be looking to try to win a race if you want to get into the playoffs. That's at least from what I can see. So certainly, and to keep in mind, looking at this playoff grid, let's look at the races we have coming up. And when we still have Daytona to end out the regular season, and of course we have that Chicago street course, and we could always get a rain-shortened race or something of that nature to shake up the playoff grid even more if we get another surprise winner or fluky type situation where it does produce a surprise winner. It certainly happens almost every summer. So you go back to Almirola 21. You can go back to a few other incidences where this happens, especially at Daytona with that second to last race of the season. But that's it. That's really all there is to talk about following this race in Sonoma. I thought it was a great race. One of my favorite Sonoma races really since Tony Stewart won his last race in 2016. So I certainly thought this was a good one. But that's really it. That's all there is to talk about. Like and subscribe if you like the video. Please share the video if you can. If you do, I really do appreciate it. And of course, about Kyle Busch getting flat out wrecked by Chastain, let's get rowdy.